Yeah, my name's Andrew. I am the Director of Marketing at BrandAlley. I originally started in data, though, so prior to joining BrandAlley, I ran my own data company using AI 7-8 years ago. So we used to work with the likes of Joe Malone and Pret a Manger, Bupa on using natural language processing, machine learning to reduce food wastage, various technical kind of advanced technical uses of data. So I'm now running marketing. I'm responsible for data, brand, creative, studio, CRM, performance. So quite a wide-ranging remit, but my background is originally data.
Some would say the jack of all trades now. So you're...
Well, we'll see.
Quick question before we dive in. How many marketers have we got in the room? Or marketer-focused? Okay, interesting. Good to get a gist, just so we know where we're at. But great. So as Andrew was saying, you've had a really interesting journey across data and marketing. How has this shaped your view of the overall relationship that data and marketing have? And how did you get down this path?
So I would say now I'm on the marketing side with data underneath me, but that does shape the marketing strategy. Previously, I've been on the data side getting frustrated with marketing for not listening to enough data or thinking about the customer. Where I am now, until I joined, they were very product focused. Now we're on that journey to make it more customer focused. And I think in e-com particularly, the difference there is we used to sell what we wanted to sell, not what the customer wanted to buy. And I think the big shift for the business now is how do we use the data, but also the technology to put the right thing in front of people, make it less friction. But ultimately, a big part of it is changing the way the business thinks, and you need data to do that to get people on that journey.
Do you think marketing or many marketing leaders treat data as a bit of an afterthought rather than having that at the core of what they do?
Not quite as much now. Certainly when I started out about 20 years ago, we would spend an awful lot of time trying to convince marketing to use data. And often we would see stuff out in the wild and think, where's that come from? What insight has been used for that? Whereas I think now it is much more, everyone wants to be kind of data driven now. I think that means different things to different people. I think the big barrier for a lot of marketing teams is there is a lack of literacy around what is actually possible with the data, what is hygiene. I mean, I don't want to sit here and talk about data hygiene, but the reality is that that's still the most important thing. To get the basics right. And a lot of, particularly with AI now, I think everyone wants to do the top level stuff. And you'll often find the C-suite are looking to do, use AI for some kind of fanciful new idea, but really the data collection isn't there or the infrastructure isn't there. So the basics are still really where it starts and ends, I think. But I think people certainly higher up than marketing even are starting to realize that is necessary.
And do you think we'll see more roles like yours come about in having that hybrid marketing data position?
I think it depends on the company. So I'm in e-com at the moment. So that's particularly important in e-com because there is a lot of data moving very quickly. However, I took over as someone who is predominantly a brand person. I think the reality is with e-com in particular, performance is really important. CRM is really important. You can't do any of those things without data. You can't do any of those things without the right infrastructure and the right tools in place. And I think there was a real, a lack of deeper understanding from those leading marketing at that point of what the right tools are, how do you measure what good looks like. Until a year and a bit ago, they weren't even looking at which channel was doing what. So it's impossible to scale if you don't know what does work and doesn't work. And I think the issue ultimately was that the people leading marketing at that point would ask questions and expect somebody else to deal with it. And I think now, I guess I'm lucky that the data team wanted to come underneath me. So it's really useful for me to have those people in the same room at the same time. And ultimately, that drives the marketing strategy. There is no marketing strategy without who the customers are, what they're buying, what they're not buying, how often they're buying, and with all the best tools and technology in place, unless you're asking that question in the first place, you are not going to make a better marketing strategy.
Very good, very good. So many of you here will know marketing is much more focused on creativity and speed. And on the flip side, you have a data team that are juggling an endless list of priorities, and they've got an awful large backlog of things to do, while also trying to consider governance, which is obviously super important when you're working with the kind of customer data that you do in marketing. So, how have you seen this impact the kind of data marketing relationship, and what happens when they don't collaborate well together?
I think traditionally they don't collaborate well together. I think that's just a fact, and having sat on both sides, like I've been on both sides of that, and I think I spent a long time in that, what people would now call that translation layer between the two. I think ultimately it comes down to a slightly different mindset. I think data and technology tend to have a more iterative kind of thought process, and that leads to a more software approach when it comes to workload and timelines and deliverables and things like that. I think marketing thinks in terms of timestamps. They think in terms of an end point. And what I've sort of realized from trying to put the two together is, and actually how you make it work is ultimately to make sure that you're not talking about an end point. You're not talking about an end deliverable, because marketing people like to have a strategy that has a big goal at the end, when really it's about looking at the timeline and working out what the deliverables are at different points, because marketing would like you to believe there is an end point, and I don't think there is ever an end point. So you're just continually working together to tick off certain things. And I think my experience from some of the purer marketing people that I have in my team is that they would think about a campaign or they think about a deliverable, but ultimately data, technology, it doesn't work that way. There's always things coming online. There's always improvements to be made, always tests to be made. Again, you need the right data, you need the right infrastructure, and you absolutely have to have that mindset of, we're on a journey together and we're going to basically put things into production at the time of need. We're not going to build an enormous thing that needs people, probably resource that marketing doesn't even have yet, a year down the line that they're thinking about using. Like, there's a very different mindset there. And I think just being more iterative does serve marketing better, because it stops pissing off data and technology people ultimately by building enormous things, models and things like that aren't even going to be used for 6 to 7 months time. They don't really understand often that the model will have changed by that point. The data you can bring in might change. Like a lot of it will change. I think infrastructure is moving so fast now. Capability in 6 months compared to now is completely different. You can't think in terms of a big bang or a big campaign, and it has to be always on now. So that for me is how you try and align the two together.
And if you were to talk a little bit more detail about what the right infrastructure looks like, you say it's important to have that right infrastructure in place. What tangibly, what does that look like?
Well, I think it comes back to the boring stuff, unfortunately, and that's also, I don't find it boring. A lot of marketing people do find it boring, and I don't want it. I am a marketer, by the way. I'm not talking down about marketing in that respect, but I would say that data quality, data collection, that stuff is the lifeblood of everything that is in there. And I think ultimately that's not a fun thing for a lot of people to talk about. But if you're not doing that right, you aren't going to be able to do the right things or make the right decisions. So the fundamentals are data quality, the flow of the data, which tools it goes through, in what order. Like, we have a problem at the moment, which is because the product feeds go into 2 different systems at slightly different times, and it basically creates a 24-hour lag. So Facebook, or Meta, actually thinks something is live on the site because it is updated at 1 a.m., but actually the sales feed is updated at midnight, and that therefore means that we're spending 24 hours of money on sales and products that are no longer live. And that's just a simple window, and aligning those two things together is really important. But the teams haven't spoken to each other. No, everyone's looking at making that kind of performance work more efficient, but they're not looking at just simple data hygiene and the flow of the data and what time, what updates when. And I think unless you've got that right, you can plug whatever you want in, and you're not going to get an efficient outcome.
So in your role as director of marketing, you obviously oversee brand, creative, CRM, performance, all that sort of stuff. What was behind the decision at BrandAlley to bring data analytics underneath the marketing arm of the business?
So some part of the data team is marketing focused, some part of it is engineering focused. They're kind of slightly separated out in that respect, but they do sit under myself. I think that's purely because, aside from maybe the CTO, I have the most depth of background in terms of the more technical side of the business, the use of data for an end point as well. And I think it just was a natural fit, really. And actually, they asked the data team, and they said that that's what they wanted to do. And I think ultimately, it's about them getting their work used. And I think too often it sits in a corner and isn't actually at the heart of the kind of work that's being done. And for me, it's where it all starts. So I think for them, they could see that was a kind of change we were looking to make. And yeah, it does work really well. It has worked really well.
So being modest, you're just a talented individual at that.
I can do both. How well I can do both is probably not for me to say, but I can do both, yeah.
Do you think this setup improves the outcomes you see within marketing and I guess like the way that the customers interact with BrandAlley?
I think we still have some challenges with how customers interact with the brands. But I think in terms of putting the foundations in place of what the customer wants to buy, how often they want to receive communications from us, what actually we're buying in the first place, like where's the growth going to come from? Again, it comes down to understanding that, looking at the data properly. We look at it every hour. The data is being looked at to look at what's working, what isn't working. The business moves really fast. That is a challenge as well. So I had a meeting on Tuesday morning at 9:30. They changed the entire marketing plan for the whole week at 9:30 on Tuesday morning. So then you've got a team of 18 people changing everything that they had planned to do. But that is a business culture challenge, not ultimately a data challenge. I think it has made a big difference in terms of having that up-to-date information and how we allocate spend, how we allocate what product goes in front of people, even down to studio is underneath me as well. So what products are we building ads for based on the lifetime value of a customer that enters the kind of ecosystem of the brand based on that product? So they're all things that define the strategy. Lining that all up when there's a team of 29 people who all want a pay rise is like difficult, right? So like keeping people on the move is important. That's why showing them data, showing them what's working, what isn't working all the time, I think that helps the marketing team as a whole, whether that is, your more technical end at CRM or in the brand team. They need to know what's working, and I think that access to it, that's also a challenge. Often they don't have access to it like on the fly, and I think that's something we've sought to change very quickly.
So you mentioned, aside from pay rises, you mentioned that you had a few challenges with this, the way this is set up. What are some of the other challenges that you have?
I think because the business is on a journey to become more customer focused, to become more data literate as a whole business, having to rebuild every part of marketing and a lot of the other parts, merchandising, buying, they all are being built again from the ground up. I think the challenge is, how do you move a business that has worked off of gut feel and done well off of gut feel to convince them that there are better ways of doing that? And the only way you can do that is with data that is not subjective. And I think the reality is that is also a challenge to get people to understand what's being put in front of them. But the data is the only way ultimately to help a business change when it is maybe resisting that change. So that's the challenge, but also I think that is the answer as well, is to make sure that they're getting the right information in front of the right people.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll come on to how you quantify these and use the data to really quantify the outcomes in marketing in a moment. But one question before we move on: do you care about finance and ops given your data team run the marketing?
Yeah.
Do they get looking?
Yeah. I mean, maybe they're behind them in the work stack, but the reality is yes, because without accurate forecasting, so finance, yeah, 100%. Like the business has had a problem with forecasting as well. I think a lot of forecasting was done based on perhaps where people would like the numbers to end up, and that obviously creates a bit of a cultural issue internally. Getting accurate data based on what we expect to do in a week, in a day, in a month, that's important. So finance, yeah, they do have a seat at the table. Maybe they could be more structured sometimes with what they're asking for. But previously, when I worked on Pret a Manger, we built using machine learning. We built algorithms to basically predict how much each store would sell on a specific day based on the day of the week and the weather and various different other things. You have to be able to forecast right down to ingredients, for example, at that point. I don't think forecasting how many crew clothing jumpers we're going to sell on a particular day should be that complicated compared to, tuna baguettes, for example. I don't think it should be that complicated. So getting finance that right information, making sure we've got the same numbers that they've got, making sure we look at the data in the same way, that's a challenge, but it's really important.
Great. So let's drill down into a couple of more tangible examples. What do you think in this kind of data marketing world that you operate in, what data-driven workflows do you think have made the biggest impact at BrandAlley?
So I think for us, something we've done quite recently is I think everyone can obsess on putting the right bit of products in front of the right person, but actually a lot of the time it's about not putting the wrong thing in front of the wrong people. So a lot of what we've been doing recently is looking at our best customers and realizing that a lot of them are still coming through what you would consider acquisition channels. So for some reason, people that are buying 11, 12 times a year from us are still coming through Google. Now, that obviously costs us a lot of money. What's happening is people are searching for certain things and they're clicking on ads or whatever while they're doing that. So what we've started to do is suppress different customer cohorts from different marketing channels so that we are making sure that we're not spending on people that know who BrandAlley is. They know what they're coming to look for. So ultimately, that's taking out the wrong stuff first is how you gradually get to the right stuff. And I think rather than trying to hit the nail on the head from the first time of asking, we've tried to pull out the stuff that we know isn't working based on the fact that the customers aren't worth as much money, or we know they don't convert as well. There's lots of different attributes we would put in there, but for us, the first place to start was how do we stop spending money on something we don't need to spend money on? And we couldn't have done that without doing the data and then putting it into a platform that enabled us to suppress it across all the channels. So yeah, that's been the first thing and actually we moved some budget and it moved paid traffic to organic traffic, something like an 89% increase in organic traffic that week. And that has saved us about 25 grand a week just from knowing how to pull out the wrong customers from something. So, and that was the first thing that we've done.
And I'm going to have to ask, how are you doing that?
We are using a CDP to do that. Yes. So we had access to a lot of the data and it was in different places, and it would go into our email platform or it would go into Meta or something like that. But our biggest financial problem was using paid channels to bring customers who are good customers back in. So that was the first thing that we did ultimately. Yeah. So we needed a way ultimately to suppress the right people, and rather than using loads of CSVs and like automating uploading every day, like using a platform that could just dynamically do that every day was the quickest answer.
Great. And how do you quantify the savings? Like, what's your process or thought process for quantifying the success or measuring success from your marketing initiatives?
So that is really important. I would say that the business I work for is very cost focused. So whenever we're looking to bring a new piece of technology in or looking to do a new thing, they look at something as a cost rather than as an investment, and that does make it challenging to get some things moving as quick as you'd like. And I think the only way to really do that is to test something and actually put commercials against it, and being able to show that actually we had an 89% uplift here and it saved us 20k here and we've had the same results, they've just moved channel. That was a really easy win. I think A/B testing is really important. It's easy to not A/B test because everyone's so busy all the time, but and often it's seen as an unnecessary step in the process to quantify something. But I have a lot of conversations with the board and people like that about we need to put money into this. And if I don't have that quantified, then I can't make that business case. And a business case can be 3 lines long if you've got the data, or it can be 2 pages of waffle long if you don't have the data. So I think it's easy. If you've got the numbers, it's easy.
So we can't be going off gut feeling.
Doesn't mean they're going to say yes, but it's easy to say why.
So gut feel is definitely not the right way to go then.
No,
in a data-driven world, right? We're all
in e-commerce should be. There's a lot of data. There's no reason not to be using it for every decision, ultimately. Right down to, like I say, what creative are we making? Like, that should come from the commercial benefit and the uplift. So we know that some of the ads that we did, we got a 32% uplift in that category because we changed the technique that we used to do it. So all of those things come down to what's the impact of this? Because ultimately, it's my head on the line anyway, so I need to show that all the time. And if I'm not working really closely with the tech team, really closely with the data team, then I have to argue the case, and that's not a good long-term strategy for me, ultimately.
Do you have any real-time use cases? Lots of people talk about them. It'd be great to get your thoughts on, do you have any, and are they actually worth the effort and cost that they can take?
So we would use dynamic segments now based on purchase behavior, because that's really important, I think, and that saves us a lot of money, not to make sure we're not advertising to somebody immediately after they've just bought something. So that's an important use case. I do think that real time is often over-egged a bit by people who are very senior in an organization, often because they're looking to put value onto the price of the business that they have. And I think everyone thinks it sounds really exciting to have everything in real time, but a lot of the time it's not really necessary. And I think that's another reason why aligning data, tech, and marketing is really important, is that just because somebody over here has asked the data or tech team, they want something real time, what's the use case? And if you're not aligned on the use cases, it's actually not worth doing that. And a lot of the time, batch loading or automation is fine. There's no real need. It's only those minor things that you think ultimately somebody's just bought something, or you need to get in with somebody when it's a really warm situation. That's a really good commercial use case, but a lot of them are, I think, unnecessary compared to things like hygiene, having the right infrastructure in place. Like, those should take priority.
Cool. So just before we wrap up, it obviously wouldn't be a big data talk without mentioning AI. We're looking ahead to the next 12, 18, 24 months. Where are you seeing AI go, and how do you think it's going to be impacting you in particular at BrandAlley? Where do you see this adding value?
So I had an AI company about 8 years ago, before it was all the rage. And I think what I found then was it was really difficult to sell it in to people. They didn't really get it. It was very difficult to kind of, that's why I've got a job now and I haven't got that company. But I think now it seems like everyone above you is trying to sell it into you without a real use case. So I think it's easy to look at performance marketing for sure. I think there's a danger though. If you look at Meta, for example, they won't even let you do targeting now. They kind of just they want you to put your money in, and then it just does what it does. And I don't ultimately think that's a great thing as well. I like to know what the strategy is and what is happening as a result of the strategy. I don't want to put things into a black box. So that's going to be a challenge, I think. The platforms will push AI. Senior leaders will push AI because it is a more valuable company if it is using AI. I think a lot of it is going to be automation of tasks. I think the one problem is going to be that a lot of junior people are coming in now and they're using AI, and I don't think that enough junior people are learning craft. And I think that's a threat, because you're going to get a lot of people outsourcing their thinking to AI, and I think you'll get a dearth of good thinking. So I would say to younger people in particular now, still learn the craft, because you will be unusual in a few years' time.
Yeah, great. So just to kind of bring this all to a close, for the data and marketing people in the room, if there was 2 pieces of advice you could give them to take away today, to go back and have a think about how they can work better with their data or marketing counterparts and the company they work for, what would that be?
Talk to each other. like actually make an effort outside of like, build a relationship. That's how everything happens, is relationships. And I think try and sit down together and work out what's the timeline of what we're doing together here. Like that for me is try and overcome that two different mindsets. One's subjective and one's objective. Like ultimately you need to find a middle ground. And I think, I actually think that is incumbent on the data side of the business, I'm sorry to say, dumb down the language a little bit, because I think it's easy to use very technical language when you're speaking to marketing people. And I think the real work happens when everyone understands what's going on. And the reality is that a lot of marketing people don't understand a lot of the technical capability. And the reality is that that's why you get asked for things that's in a strategy document that's not possible. A lot of things are built on an idea that isn't possible. So, and that's not because people expect you to just make something up. It's because they don't know what is possible and what isn't possible. And I think it's really incumbent on an organization to, dumbing down is the wrong word, we need to speak the same language. And I think ultimately it's harder to pick up technical language if you don't understand it. So I think it's incumbent on the more technical side to try and build that bridge and speak a more common language. That's what I think is really important.
When you say talk to each other, like tangibly, what, daily stand-ups, weekly stand-ups, or like group?
I think it doesn't even have to. It doesn't even have to be about work. Sometimes, like just building a relationship doesn't have to be about what are we doing right now. I think it's really important to build that bridge. However, that is appropriate. Like in an organization, sometimes it's remote, and that it's difficult, right? You can't do that in the same way, but it is really important to kind of get on as people, and I think that does build bridges across silos, which every company has that silo. Every company. So it is really important. It's not like unusual. It is incumbent on everybody to try and build that relationship. I also understand that sometimes that has been tried and it doesn't, the other people in the room are not doing it. And that's like, all you can do is what you can do ultimately.
Great. So there we have it. The secret sauce for a data and marketing team to work together. So amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up? Does anybody have any? I'd love to see Andrew sweat a little bit more. If we have. Does anybody? Have we got a microphone anywhere? Is that? It's coming. It's coming. Unless you can shout really loudly.
Oh, here we are.
Hello. Yeah. So I work as a data scientist. So I work with marketing people a lot. To be specific, what exact KPI do you seek or ask the data people, which helps you to align the marketing campaigns?
It depends, and that's a really shit answer to give, but it depends. It depends what the objective is ultimately. So what type of marketing you're talking to, what their activity is. Like there is no one KPI ultimately. So that's the kind of subjective objective. Like there is no one KPI.
But I'd say there has to be an alignment on the goals you're trying to achieve with them to help decide that with the teams. So that's probably the most important thing.
I have a question about ROI. How will you calculate ROI using AI?
Well, at the moment we don't. The reality is attribution was really difficult 10 years ago. It's always been difficult, and ultimately that's because I don't think the platforms want you to know what works and what doesn't work. So I can look at Meta and and see a 15 ROAS on something, and then I'll look at MMM and it will tell me that actually that's not making any money at all. So you do need to, and that's where the craft comes in, truthfully. You need to have a gut feel of the role of all the channels and what the different pieces do together. And I do think it's really important that that is not outsourced completely to AI, because they don't go across the channels. You can't trust the channels, because Google will tell you should put more money into Google. Meta will tell you to put more money into Meta. Like that's just how it is. And there's nobody who is looking at both in a way that you can understand very simply and telling you the right answer. So you have to get good at the craft, and gut feel is important. Gut feel is important.
Great, thank you. I'm sorry if there is any more questions. We've run out of time, but we've got to stop. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If anybody does have any more questions, we'll hang around here for a few minutes. Otherwise, come and find us in 5 or 10 minutes at the DinMo stand C21. So thank you very much.